Hello, everyone, and I want to say right now, wonderful Wednesday. And whether it is a Wednesday or not, I hope that you are having a wonderful Wednesday, because I certainly am. And part of the reason why I am having a wonderful Wednesday on this Rediscovering Your Passion and Purpose with Patty. And I guess I should also add, I just keep assuming by now, so many of you, all of you have been listening to all the previous episodes. But in case you are new to it, I am Patty Stool, and I am the host here, and I am the Chief Pathfinder of Pathways with Patty. And it is a wonderful Wednesday because of this lovely guest that I have on today's show. And my guest today is Carolyn CJ Jones. She is a forgiveness coach, motivational speaker, and multi-award and medal-winning author, having spent the bulk of her adulthood as angry, bitter, blaming victim. All through her childhood, CJ managed her feelings by drinking. After she became sober, she stumbled upon a way to forgive her parents. It was this experience that led her to begin guiding others to forgive their resentment, thus promoting peace. CJ lives just north of the Golden Gate Bridge with her two 14-year-old kitties, Ruby and Pini. CJ, it is a privilege and a blessing to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Patty, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really honored to be on your show.
Oh, well, ever since our initial call, I've been looking forward to this time because, a lot of people think that when you get to a certain point in your life, that's basically it. And one of the things that I enjoyed so much about hearing your initial story, because it was in a nutshell, and we get to expand on that today. But what I appreciate is you are going to be sharing with our audience today that no matter what age you are at, forgiveness is a powerful tool. And it isn't always so much of forgiving the other person as it is not letting that person or people take up that much real estate inside your soul and eating you up in the ways that you have. But really, you have found forgiveness and you work with people on that. So with that said, please share your story of your challenges, your obstacles, and how you've come through all of them to where you are with us today.
All right. It all started back east in a suburb of Philadelphia. That's where I was born. And gradually in my life, I moved first with my family to Ohio and grew up there. And then when I graduated from nursing school, Kent State University, I moved to Colorado for 27 years. And then my husband and I wanted to cruise the world in a sailboat. So we couldn't do it from Colorado.
No.
So moved.
Kind of landlocked there, huh?
A little landlocked, yes. So we moved to Sausalito, California, and lived aboard a 45-foot sailboat for 3 years.
Wow.
Now I'm digressing a little bit, so let me go back and pick up from the beginning.
Okay.
I grew up second of six, and life was tumultuous for me. There were great times and a lot of opportunities given to me, and there was a lot of trauma. Mm-hmm. I left my house to go to college filled with worthlessness, a low self-esteem, no self-confidence, yada, yada, yada. It went on and on. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't think too much of it through nursing school until senior year. I got a Valentine's card from my fiance, and I was so excited to open it and see what he had to say. Mm-hmm. Well, he told me he had been married to another woman.
Oh my gosh.
I know
Well, not the kind of Valentine cards that I think anyone would ever imagine receiving.
exactly. Well, I was absolutely shattered, as you
Yes.
can well imagine. And that started a crying spell that lasted for days.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in a house with other women and they didn't know what to do with me.
Mm,
Finally, they decided to take me out and get me drunk.
mm,
Now, I'd never had anything to drink in my whole life up to this point, and I was a senior in college.
mm-hmm.
Well, I got drunk that night and I didn't stop for 30 years.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
drank over my feelings, my resentment, my anger, my bitterness, all over my childhood. And I blamed my childhood for everything that was wrong with me. All of my difficult feelings and behaviors were because of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I got
Wow.
married with a to a fellow alcoholic and spent 20 years in the marriage.
Ooh.
What happened then is we were living aboard the boat, living at a marina, and I fell in love with another dock mate.
Wow.
I left my marriage. And it wasn't like I came upon that suddenly or briefly. I journaled about it for 9 months before I realized that the marriage was over. And this other man was acting like a person, a man who likes a woman
Mm-hmm.
romantically.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I left my marriage, so I could be available to this other man.
Okay.
He
So
didn't.
so it's kind of like a snowballing effect that just keeps happening. So one poor choice after another, but you're thinking not that you're making poor choices, of course. You think that you're going to help the bad situation that you're in, and in reality, you're just complicating the situation.
Oh boy, did I complicate it. I brought all of this on myself, what happened next, because his words were, I don't like you any more than anyone else. I was just being kind.
Oh my gosh.
Those words just were a sword through my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I became shattered again. I drank and cried for 2 months without eating.
Mm.
Finally, realizing one day that I was killing myself, really literally killing myself, I walked to the back of the boat. I was living on another boat now of a mutual friend of my husband and mine. I walked to the back of the boat and I threw my arms up to the heavens and I said, God, if you're there, if there is such a thing, please help me. I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went inside and I laid down and cried myself to sleep. Well, it wasn't a month that passed before I found myself headed to San Diego to hook up with my old bartender,
Well,
who
that's
was,
kind of ironic, isn't it?
yes, very. She was getting sober herself.
Okay.
I moved in and I had planned to go for a couple of weeks to get a handle on my drinking. And I stayed a year and a half and got sober.
Good for you.
Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you.
That was the anchor that God tossed to you.
Yes, it was. It
For
was.
that life preserver, I think, is probably more the thing I should be saying. It was a life preserver that he
Yeah.
sent was connecting with her.
Yes. We had
So
great discussions
so
and great, I'm sorry.
no, don't be sorry. So I was just going to be asking you. So was she already sober, or she was already working on getting sober, and through that she was helping you with what she was learning in the process?
The way it happened was we both decided we wanted to stop drinking and we were doing it with willpower. And
Okay.
then one day she said, I've been to 12-step meetings before, and they were very useful. So I think I'm going to go to a 12-step meeting. And I said, okay, I'll go with you. That first meeting, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was at the Presbyterian Church in, where were we? A suburb of San Diego, Ocean Beach.
Oh, okay.
It was a circle. Everyone was in a circle, and it was a candlelight
Mm.
ceremony or meeting. I remember everyone going around the circle introducing themselves and saying, "Hi, I'm so and so, an alcoholic." I thought to myself, what in the world are you going to say when it comes to you, Carolyn? Well, the words, "I'm Carolyn and I'm an alcoholic," just flowed out of my mouth.
Wow.
I felt this incredible relief
Mm-hmm.
to have said that. And that's how my sobriety and 12-step meetings started. I
Wow.
ended up for the next year and a half going to 4 and 5 meetings a day
Mm.
to offset my desire to drink over my rage and bitterness and grief over the unrequited love and my guilt over how I left my husband.
Mm-hmm.
I was a mess at first. I took many, many walks during the day. I journaled 3 to 4 hours a day.
Mm.
Go fast forward to, I guess it was the end of my first year. I decided that I wanted to take a road trip around the western states and Baja, Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
Baja, California, I guess it is.
Now, can I ask you real quick, CJ, during all this time, because you had mentioned that you had gone to college to be a nurse, did you become a nurse?
Oh, yes, I did. And when I lived in Colorado, I practiced for 27 years.
So were you one of those people then that during the daytime you were sober doing your job, and then it basically when you weren't working, that's when you weren't sober? Is that how that was working?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I actually was very successful in my career. I
Mm-hmm.
was mostly administrative. However, well, and in one of those jobs, I worked for the state of Colorado's Medicaid department, and I created, developed, and managed a program that allowed high infants and children that were dependent upon technology to live to be
Mm-hmm.
served at home with private duty nursing care instead of living in the hospital.
Oh, wow. That's
It
huge.
was awesome. These
Wow.
kids flourished. They just flourished. One little girl, she was 3 when I first brought her into the program.
Mm-hmm.
She had been living in the hospital for 3 years, and the only activity she could tolerate was being strapped to a tilt table and having it put in an upright position for 15 minutes. And that they did 3 times a day, and that's all she could tolerate. She was
Wow.
on a ventilator to breathe. She had
Wow.
a tracheostomy that the ventilator dispensed the breaths through.
Wow.
They
So
thought that, go
So,
ahead.
so when you finally get down to San Diego with your former bartender, are you still a nurse or had you gotten out of it at that point?
I got out of it.
And
I
and so
decided,
so yeah, as a nurse, you know physically, mentally, psychologically everything that you've been doing to yourself, correct?
yes,
But the power of that alcohol is so much stronger than that knowledge and that power you already have about what it's doing to you, correct?
absolutely correct.
Wow.
The thing is, oh, I lost that thought.
So you
The
find you
thing,
go ahead.
The thing is, I thought it was helping me, so I had to drink more to feel the effects from it. What
Gotcha.
I didn't realize at the time was the alcohol was fueling my rage.
Right, right. It was complicating the situation.
Yes, terribly so.
Mm-hmm. So you're getting sober, you're in the San Diego area, you have found this 12-step program. And how long of a process was it before you really felt like you were getting a handle on your alcoholism?
Probably 4 years, because that's when I discovered how to forgive my past.
And how did you do that?
Oh, this is a beautiful story.
Well, all of it is beautiful. Let me put it that way. And it's
Oh,
more beautiful
good.
because you are sharing it. Because I know there's people listening right now that even though they may not have an alcohol addiction, we all have our vices, and we all know people who have vices that are a very big stronghold on them. And many people listening right now want to be able to help that loved one, but don't know. So I know through your beautiful story that you are sharing, this is helping so many that are listening or watching on YouTube right now.
That's wonderful. That's why I do what I do, to help others.
So you get to the point where you're ready to do some forgiveness. And how do you get there, and what do you do?
Oh, I had no intention of forgiving ever.
Okay.
So it was 3 years sober, and I was doing my traveling. And I made it back to the Bay Area, which is where I started. One day, I decided to do a self appraisal. So I looked at the things that the ways my behavior had led to the demise of my relationship with my boyfriends in my life. And what I realized was I used to get drunk and yell and scream at them that they were worthless and would
Oh,
never amount to anything.
oh, well, that's not very attractive.
Not at all. Not at all. I was horrified to remember that. Thank
Yes.
goodness they've all forgiven me.
Nice.
Well, that was a huge light bulb moment, because I realized that I didn't mean it about them. I meant it about myself.
Right. And you
And
were using
then,
kind of them as the scapegoat for your feelings.
exactly, hurt people hurt others in
Yes.
the same ways that they were hurt.
Yes. Yep.
So it occurred to me that all those years, my father called me worthless and said I would never amount to anything. He didn't mean it about me, he meant it about himself.
Himself. Wow. What a
That was
revelation.
huge.
Yeah.
That was life altering.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, I saw him as a fellow human being, not my father,
Mm-hmm.
just another fellow human being who was hurting from worthlessness.
Mm-hmm.
I had compassion because I knew what that worthless wound felt like.
Mm-hmm.
Over the period of a year, I went back and forth between worthlessness and, I mean, anger and compassion,
Mm-hmm.
until one day I realized I had forgiven my parents.
Wow. That's quite the revelation.
Oh, it was, Patty. And the peace and freedom I felt were immediate and immense,
Mm-hmm.
just immense.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So carry on several years, a few years, and I moved back to the Bay Area, living in an apartment just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I was having problems because I felt like I had no purpose in life
Mm-hmm.
other than to be bothered by all the hangovers from my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
the difficult feelings I had as a result of being told I was worthless and fat, stupid, and ugly, and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Isn't it amazing that these things that we really do endure during our childhood, we find ways that we believe that we're overcoming those issues, and really what we're doing is we're just stuffing them down. We're putting them what we think is in a neat little box and just putting them away in our brain or in our heart or wherever. And we think, well, that's it, we don't ever have to deal with that anymore, and yet it still catches up with you one way or another, doesn't it?
exactly, yes. It
So
sure
that's what has
does.
been happening to you. All of these things, now that you're getting sober, you're remembering these things and they're all coming up because it's time to deal with all of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
I started feeling so poorly that I started praying to God to let me die
Mm,
because I saw no purpose in me being alive. I didn't want to go through the rest of my life. Now, at the time, I was 52 years old.
mm-hmm,
I was 48 when I discovered sobriety.
mm-hmm,
Well, so set that aside, that part of the story, and move forward to I did what I was taught to do when I felt wonky. So I went to a meeting.
mm-hmm,
There was a gentleman by the name of Steve. Steve shared, and he could have been sharing my story. So I felt really akin to him. And after the meeting, I went up to him to share some resources that I had discovered. Even though I was still not healed, even though I was praying to die, I still was 2 steps ahead of him.
mm-hmm.
So I shared resources, books, my therapist's name, and my story a little bit. Steve was so grateful he started crying.
Oh, wow.
Well, I walked to my car and I started crying because I realized in that moment that I had found my purpose.
Ah,
And my purpose was and is to share my story and resources with others so that they can feel better too.
yep, yep. That's exactly right. And that's part of what you're doing here today that you've been leading up to, sharing this story, because that is exactly what you're doing with your new passion. Well, it's not new anymore, but with your passion of wanting to help others. And
Yes,
and that's what's so cool about doing this podcast, is to have people like you come on here. And because I believe the center message to all of my guests have been and will continue to be serving, not only helping yourself, but more importantly, wanting to help and serve others. And what an incredible purpose to have.
yes, yes. When
Wow.
I got to my car, I said, God, I take it back. I don't want to die now.
Mm. And he knew that, but you had to realize that.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So carry on. That was about 6 years sober. And at 7 years sober, I discovered how to live in a state of gratitude.
Mm.
That occurred through answering 3 questions that I found in a book by Dr. Fred Luskin, who's a PhD psychologist from Stanford University. And he's a worldwide forgiveness expert.
Mm.
Those 3 questions are: what is the lesson that I learned from this experience? What is the positive thing or things that occurred because of this experience? And what can I be grateful for? When I did those questions, now, mind you, I had still been grieving over the unrequited love this whole time.
Mm.
I couldn't figure out why I read him so wrong. But anyway, in that moment, I realized I had 5 things. Well, at that point, it was 3 things for which I was grateful. 3 positive things that had happened. And they were the rejection or the attraction, pried me out of my marriage, got me sober, and led me to forgive my parents.
Well, you know what is so interesting about his questions are were mainly towards forgiveness. I know many times on this podcast when I've talked to other people, when I talk about my foundation is PMA, positive mental attitude, that is not to say that that Patty is positive every single day of every single minute. What it means is exactly what you just said, that when I face those challenges, when I hit those obstacles, those 3 questions that you just said, which I'm going to ask you to repeat again, are exactly how I look at when I hit those obstacles, because they're still based in PMA, positive mental attitude. Can you repeat once more what those 3 questions were?
Absolutely. And this works not only for resentment, which is what Dr. Luskin was illustrating these for, but it works for my grief.
Mm-hmm. It's applicable in so many different areas.
Yes, yes, it is. They are. And the questions are, what lesson or lessons did I learn? What positive things came as a result of the difficulty? And what about the difficulty can I be grateful for?
Because as we all know, with every choice you make in life, there are consequences, and that can be a positive or a negative. And even when the choice we made turns out to be not so positive, right there, those 3 questions are exactly what to ask yourself to turn that negative into a much more positive outcome.
A 180-degree turn.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Patty.
So you've had this aha moment by reading this and realizing that so much of what your foundation was built upon, resent is a huge part of it. So you're now
Yes,
working on forgiveness and getting rid of that negativity in your life.
yes,
And it's
yes.
got to feel, you got to feel lighter, and you've got to feel enlightened.
Oh, it was immediate that I felt lighter.
Wow.
Like the rocks in my backpack I've been carrying for years fell out.
Yes, most definitely. Yes. Wow. Yes.
Yes, it was a beautiful moment.
Wow.
In years to come, I had 2 more gratitudes, and one of them because of the rejection, and one of them was it allowed me to write my book on forgiveness, The Art of Forgiveness, A Promise of Peace.
That's a beautiful cover.
Thank you. There's a story about that too.
Wow.
And it brought me to the forgiveness work that I do today.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, how could I be in grief over such beautiful results?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, 23 years later, I emailed this guy and I put in the subject line so he wouldn't delete it. This is a thank you note.
Wow.
And I sent the first couple paragraphs of my book, which talks about being told that he was only being kind, and the way I responded to it, which was we were sitting in a sailboat at the time, and I wanted to fall through the sailboat into the murky waters below and drowned.
Mm.
And I sent that to him, and then I said, and here is what I'm grateful for because of your rejection. and I listed all the 5 things. Now, the thing is, I hadn't sold a book in several days, or actually a couple weeks. And I noticed that on the day that I sent the email, one book sold because I put the link in the email in case he wanted to get it.
Yes.
One book was sold on that date, and then nothing sold for 2 weeks after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly suspect that he got the book to make sure that I did not name him
Mm-hmm.
in the book, which I did not.
Right. Because it really wasn't about naming him. It was about the forgiveness that came a part of your interaction with that person.
Yes. Yes.
And not whether or not he was forgiving you, but you were forgiving him because you needed that for you.
Yes. I did. I did.
Wow.
Yeah, but it took 23 years to get to a point where I could really let go of it.
Now, were you able to talk to your parents in person, or had they already passed on by the time you had reached this?
No, I hadn't. They were still living. And it's very sad. I feel great sadness over the fact that I never really had a discussion with them. I wrote a letter.
Mm-hmm.
However, the damage was done when my mother read on my website my story
Mm-hmm.
without talking it over with them first. So I created a wedge between myself and my parents,
Mm-hmm.
which they both died in 2020 from COVID.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So and to this day, I feel sad that we couldn't have resolved things. So
But
I talk to them a lot.
good, good. I was just going to ask you if you have conversations, or I know that some people have said that, they in a journal, they will write a letter to that loved one that they can no longer physically speak to in person or whatever. And that also makes them feel better because at that point, and at this point for you, it is about your healing and for you to be able to continue to move forward with your life, knowing, I mean, with the letter, at least you made the attempt to bridge that gap and to to overcome those issues that created so much of a foundation for you that was not healthy.
Right, right.
Yeah. Now, what about with your ex-husband? Were you able to do that with him?
We have unfinished business. Yes, we've spoken, and it was on good terms. And yet, it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I realized that I was a large cause of our relationship failing.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I had said it was all because of him.
Mm-hmm.
I've wanted to talk to him and share that with him. I don't have his email address, so I can't email him. And I need to call him. I still remember his phone number after 23 years
Mm-hmm.
and discuss it with him. We've had nice phone calls, but those occurred, 5, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time to talk to him again.
Right.
And
Right.
that's unfinished.
Right. Um, kind of on a side note that I've been curious about, which may lead into part of this, but you go by your nickname, or you go by CJ. Now I know with another friend that I have, she goes by CJ, and it's because her first name and last name, those are the two initials. With you, is that related to it, or is there another story that goes along with how CJ became your nickname?
That's related to it, but there is a story.
Okay.
when I wrote my first book and published it in 2010, Opening the Gates of the Heart, A Journey of Healing.
Another beautiful cover.
Thank you. When I first wrote that, I forget where we were. Can you repeat your question?
About how did CJ, the nickname, come
Oh,
about?
yes, of course, of course. I joined a self-publishing organization, and they said, you need to build your platform, which meant that I needed to be found on Google.
Okay.
So I Googled myself, Carolyn Jones. 25 pages and more of Carolyn Jones, the actress. I was nowhere to be seen.
You were on page 22 at the bottom of 55,000 people, right?
Yes, yes. So I knew right away I needed a middle name, but I didn't have a middle name because I wasn't given one at birth.
Okay.
And I kept my maiden name when I got married because of professional reasons for my nursing. I was known as Carolyn Jones, so I kept it that way. Well, suddenly it occurred to me that CJ is the perfect middle name because when I was a senior in high school, I was one of the leads in the musical Carousel. And I stole the show every night we performed. My good friend, as a result of that, named me the original Cracker Jack. And that is what CJ stands for in my name.
You are a Cracker Jack, which I love Cracker Jacks. As a matter of fact, I grew up with Cracker Jacks. And whenever I go to a baseball game, I have to have Cracker Jacks also. Oh, that is a wonderful story. So speaking of your books, did you know that there was a writer inside of you, or was through getting sober, is that a realization that came to you?
It was a realization that came to me that my writing could go in a book. But I had been writing well since I was in high school. In fact, in junior year of high school, I was put in the enriched English class because of my writing skills.
Awesome.
And as far as my book goes, let me see if I can do it this way.
Get it closer to you, towards you. I think that might help, and center it up a little bit over in front of your face, maybe. It just doesn't want to come in focus, but that's okay.
There's a story behind it. It was 2004. I had forgiven. I was traveling and I stopped in the Bay Area. I was sitting on the cockpit seat. Well, before I left the area in 2001, I went to the boat to say goodbye to my husband. And I was sitting in the cockpit looking across the water of the bay to the shore across the way. And I went, wow, that's supposed to be a neat place. I'm going to go visit it before I leave, because I'm never coming back to the Bay Area. Never.
Never say never, right?
Right. I own property here now. Anyway, so I went to visit and I discovered these beautiful unused gates sitting at the bottom of people's property. And being a photographer since the age of 10, I decided that if I ever came back, I would photograph the gates.
Oh, wow.
So in 2004, in February, I came back and I started photographing the gates every day for hours. I would walk around the neighborhoods and shoot these gates. Well, so over here, I'm shooting these gates. Over here, I'm journaling every day to maintain my sobriety. one day I titled a gate because I was going to title them and sell them to galleries.
Mm-hmm.
So I named one. Let's see if we can get this to go.
Mm.
Here we go. Hang on. How do I get off of Blur? I named one
Oh,
Webs of Fear.
wow. Look at that.
And what I wrote in my journal one morning, this is in November of 2004, I have spent a lifetime spinning webs of terror and shame between the spires that stand as sentinels to my heart.
Mm. Wow, that's
I about
beautiful.
fell on the floor, Patty, because that gave voice to that photo with all the webs on it that I'd
Yes.
named Webs of Fear.
Yes.
It was at that point I thought, and I wrote that in my journal. Now, I decided to look through my journals and see if there were any other verses that might pop out at me. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
found tons of them.
Wow.
It was at that point I realized I had a book in the making.
Man.
So I spent the next 6 years working on my book, and I want to share one with you. This is Visions of Gratitude.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, please share.
Visions of Gratitude. When seen with eyes and heart that appreciate, everything around and within me becomes more pleasing, more beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
And this is my favorite one. I'll tell you the story.
Oh,
This is
lovely.
Moments of Wonder.
Wow.
One day I was done photographing for the day and walked back to my car, threw my photo gear in the back seat, and got in ready to leave and looked in the rearview mirror to see if anyone was coming because I was parked alongside the road. Well, what I saw was this gate. It was facing north, which is the direction I was pointing in. And so I hadn't seen it when I walked by. Well, I knew that it was a special gate. So I got out of the car and I shot a couple shots and then drove away.
Mm-hmm.
Several months later, when I was titling all these gates, because the titles came first for the gates were the first thing I titled, and then
Mm-hmm.
I added the verses.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I realized that there was a star in there that I had never seen before.
Yep. Yep. That was the first thing that I noticed when you just showed that.
Well, I went however long it was, but quite a long while before I saw it. And it was when I stood back to look at the gates and come on, Ruby, come on,
There's your fur baby.
to look
Uh,
at my gates. And I saw that star. And from that came moments of wonder. A beam of light falls upon the metal. I look with awe and wonder at the star that appears out of nowhere. Do you suppose there has always been such richness, such wonder, such beauty in the world? Perhaps it has been there all along, waiting to be noticed, to be seen with the eyes of the heart.
oh my gosh. You know, something that is so absolutely incredible about that book that you're sharing with us right now is the fact that it combines the beauty of your photography. It then combines your beautiful words and knowing that it's all part of your healing that is happening from your alcoholism.
Yes. My second book, which I wrote, which I published in 2010, is Opening the Gates of the Heart. And the first edition was A Journey of Healing. This
Okay.
is the second edition, which tells the stories behind each of the gates and what happened when I was photographing them.
Wow.
Kind of fun. And it's images that heal and the stories behind them. This is how I started. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Webs of Fear.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, you showed that one. Yes.
Okay. Well, that turned into gratitude. This is Visions of Gratitude.
It's absolutely beautiful.
When seen with eyes and heart that appreciate, everything around and within me becomes more pleasing, more beautiful.
Wow.
So the tone of the book went from that angst and that fear and terror and shame to gratitude. And here's another one. This is Moments of Wonder.
Mm, awesome.
And I did not see that star. I did not see that star from the moment I photographed it, not for months.
That's so
About
interesting because I know for
9 months.
me, that's the first thing that's popping out when I see that. So it is interesting that that's not something that popped out to you.
I know, isn't it?
Wow.
Like, what was wrong with my eyes?
It wasn't ready yet.
It wasn't. I discovered it because the star, because when I went to title the gates, because in the book it's the gates that are titled, even though the title appears over the verse.
Mm-hmm.
I had them spread out. I made 5x7s out of all the slides. I shot all these on slide film.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like 900 slides.
Wow.
I
Holy moly.
know. They're all of Gates.
But
And
it's kind of profound though, isn't it? Because in a sense, I mean, if you really want to stretch your imagination, I guess, but in a sense, you had put up your own gates on your feelings and interactions with others, and you had kept those gates locked to your heart and your soul using alcohol as the main thing. um and it's kind of like once you decided to become sober, the gates opened up on so many levels for you. So it isn't ironic because there's a reason for all of it, but to think that that is what your photography at that moment in time, as you're still working on getting sober, it's about gates and how they are relating to your journey of sobriety.
yes, yes.
Wow.
In fact, you said it beautifully. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Wow.
That's exactly what they represented. And I realized that, oh, I photographed in February and March, and probably toward the end of March, I realized what the gates symbolized.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's powerful stuff.
Yes. So I did that. I did that. Oh, I need to read the verse Moments of Wonder.
Yes, please
No,
do.
Ruby. A beam of light falls upon the metal. I look with awe and wonder at the star that appears out of nowhere. Do you suppose there has always been such richness, such wonder, such beauty in the world? Perhaps it has been there all along, waiting to be noticed, to be seen with the eyes of the heart.
Mm, beautiful. Absolutely
Thank you.
beautiful.
And let me just read how the book ends. This is Promise of Peace.
Oh, wow. Man, beautiful.
Thank you. Promise of Peace. When I practice the principles of love for myself and others, the gates of my heart melt into the glow of dusk, and peace rises to greet me.
Mm. Man, I'm telling you right now, your words are so very touching because I'm finding my eyes mist up from the beauty of your words. And of course, and I'm sorry for those of you that are listening right now that you are not seeing these incredible photographs of the gates that CJ has taken. Because when you see the pictures and then you hear the words that go with it, um, they absolutely go hand in hand. They are beautiful together. And it
Yeah.
really does make you look at a gate completely different through a different viewpoint, a different vision, and how profound that it's all a part of you unlocking your soul, and all about you in order for you to live your best dash, as I like to say.
Yes. Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. So what
Wait,
would you,
before
oh,
before we go on, let me
yeah,
share one more thing here about the gates.
yes, please do.
Three, I believe this book was divinely created, and I say that with total assurance because three-quarters of the verses in this book
Mm-hmm.
are verbatim what I wrote in my journal years before I started this book. So I wrote what ended up being a verse, and then I matched the picture with it years later.
It's like a full circle moment.
Yes. Yeah. So there's no way I could have known.
No,
And so God had to do with that.
divine intervention.
Divine intervention. Gotta love it.
Yep, yep, for
It's
sure.
for us, it's present for us every minute.
That's exactly right. So, CJ, what would you say that you are passionate about right now, personally and professionally?
Personally, I'm passionate about my two kitties
Mm.
that I adopted. Well, I took them from a woman who was moving to the UK, and she had these two 14-year-olds and two horses and two dogs to get rid of.
Oh,
So
wow.
I took them in, and they are a hoot.
They keep you busy.
They keep me busy. I had no idea that two cats could take so much time, and I'm passionate about loving them.
Awesome. That's cool. And what would you say right now is your personal purpose?
To grow the awareness of this book, Opening the Gates of the Heart. And to do that, I have started a book club, Open Heart Book Club.
Mm.
And we meet every week on Zoom and read one verse and look at one photo, and then we discuss it and
Oh,
we share
wow.
our experiences or how we're joyful or how we're stuck. It's,
Wow.
yeah,
That's very cool. What day of the week do you do your Zooms?
Tuesday from 2 to 3 Pacific time.
Wow. Okay,
And the
you
name of
heard
the
that.
group is Open Hearts Book Club.
That is wonderful.
Thank you.
Wow. That is a wonderful purpose.
Yes, I'm going to be starting another group called Sacred Spaces of an Open Heart.
Oh, wonderful. That's beautiful.
That's actually going to be the title of my memoir. I figured that it had to be.
Yes, most definitely. So, CJ, what would you say is your superpower?
My compassion.
Mm, yes, that's absolutely right.
I have a high level of compassion.
Very good. And how would you say you are living your best life, or as I like to say, living your best dash?
Well, I've been struggling financially for the past several months, and I'm living my best purpose by moving forward and starting another book club that will be a month. It'll be an 8-week course, if you will, using the book and studying forgiveness. And
Beautiful.
that's going to start soon here on Facebook.
Great. Wonderful. Are there any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, hope, have hope. And hope is an acronym that stands for two things. The first is hold on, pain ends.
Mm.
And then hold on, possibilities emerge.
Oh, I love that. That's an aha moment right there, CJ.
Yes, I
Wow.
thought you'd like that.
I love that. I'm going to be writing that down here momentarily. I'll tell you, that is great. Repeat that once again, the acronym for hope.
Hang on, pain ends. Hang on, possibilities emerge.
Oh, yes. Right there's a book. Right there is a book, CJ. You might want to be thinking about that.
Oh, now that's a goodbye.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Decisions.
Exactly. So much in so little time, right?
Yes, yeah.
But you can make it happen. You are making it happen. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, CJ, for being my guest today. You are an inspiration, and I know that you are motivating so many people out there to look at are there resentments, are there regrets, are there unforgiven things in people that we need to look at and work on those things to not only free ourselves, but in return we may be freeing other people as well. So
May
thank
I
you.
say one more thing?
Oh yes, please do.
It's about forgiveness. Forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about you and clearing your heart and
Mm-hmm.
soul of the resentment.
Yeah. Because like we said before, all that ends up happening is they're taking a valuable real estate in your heart and soul that you need for other parts of your life that are much more positive and have such a great purpose that you don't want negativity taking up that real estate in your soul.
That's right.
Well, as once again, thank you, CJ. I know that there's going to be people that will want to reach out and make contact with you. What are some of the ways that they can get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is Carolyn CJ Jones at .com, CarolynCJJones.com. And then you can email me at CarolynCJJones at yahoo.com. Those are the two best ways to reach me. If you email me, put something in the subject line like, I saw you on Patty's podcast
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, excellent. And many of you know this routine, but for those of you that are new, if you didn't get that, know that you can go to the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or you are on one of the podcast platforms. In the description are those links that Carolyn CJ just spoke about. So all you have to do is tap on the link and it will put you directly in contact with her. And then you can ask her questions. You can find out more about her book or become a part of her Facebook book club. There's many ways that you can work with her and meet up with her. So once again, just lovely sharing this time with you, CJ. Thank you.
It was delightful. Thank you.
And for those of you out there listening, remember to subscribe and follow this podcast, and go ahead and invite your family and friends to subscribe as well. That would be really awesome. And don't forget to check out my website at www pathwayswithpatty.org and sign up for a Zoom chat with me. We can talk about where you've been, what's your passion and purpose, or maybe you're rediscovering your passion and purpose. And while you're at it, maybe you would like to share your story on the podcast as well. So until we meet again, continue to live your best dash and know that life's an adventure, and I want you to enjoy the journey because your life matters. Thank you for joining us today, and may God bless you all.